We're being forced to give up ownership of our identities.
In a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
In the future, do you think everyone is going to be chipped?
I think it'll be voluntary, but I am certainly convinced that millions of people will find it very, very valuable to have a smart device under their skin.
But at best, the records have never been permanent. They've never been perfect. Until now. When I was a child, and I was in high school, even before high school, you have someone in authority who's telling you what to do. They don't explain why, you don't understand the system, and yet the system is applied to you. You have no power within the context of the system. You are not allowed to change the rules. You're not even allowed to petition to change the rules. That's simply the way things are. And someone says, do this, and you ask why, and they say, because I said so. This is the way a lot of power relationships work today, whether it's in the United States, where our electoral system is gerrymandered so much that we can't change power even if we campaign, to the operations of internet giants, where you see everybody complaining, you see everybody trying to boycott.
Never give up on the family of apps.
You see everybody pressuring them and saying bad things about them. But they only change their policies at the very smallest edges, if at all. And the reason I think they feel so comfortable, all of these types of authorities throughout history, is they have a mastery of our fear of what happens if we break the rules, what happens if we try to change the way the system works. And when I was young, the way this worked was if you cut up in class, if you got out of line, they'd say, in of course a very concerned manner, for you, because it's you they're always worried about, not them, not their convenience, but you. You need to think about your future. You need to think about what it's going to look like if everybody else is following the rules and you're the only one breaking them. If you get out of line, if you get a bad grade, if you get a detention, if you do whatever, if you talk back, if you question everything all the time, this will go down on your permanent record. And then it will follow you to high school, and then it will follow you to college, and then it will follow you to workplace, and then it'll follow you through the rest of your interactions with power. And as a kid, when you don't know anything about anything, that's actually terrifying. And over time, bit by bit, as you do more and more, the threat begins to lose its power, because you realize that there actually isn't a permanent record. Nobody cares what you did in elementary school. Nobody cares what you did in middle school. Nobody cared about high school or college. Honestly, nobody really cares about what you do in your workplace, besides your employer and then your next employer. But at best, the records have never been permanent. They've never been perfect. Until now. And this is the problem of the world we live in. The younger you are in this room, relative to the person next to you, the more of your life is known and recorded by people you have no influence over. And these records, at least under the laws in the United States, which have been unfortunately exported around the world into a kind of status quo, says that you don't own records about your private life. These companies that created them, they're their records, not you, even if they're entirely and exclusively about you. And this is, I think, the central problem that we're struggling with, is all of these companies, all of these governments, everybody who has any sort of aspiration to power is recognizing that understanding as much as possible about as many as possible is the lever of influence. We see target news, we see this being used to write news, we see this being used to change politics, see this being used to try to influence purchasing decisions, right? All of these things are about shaping human behavior. And all of these things, which I would argue are fundamentally anti-democratic forces, and actually I would argue these are anti-social forces, are really about shaping the behavior of other people to your benefit, right? And if this can be done secretly, if this can be done privately, all the better. And when I look at this, and I think about my own history, and I think about what's happening on the internet. I think one of the biggest vulnerabilities in our system, right, the vulnerability that's being exploited by all of these forces, is identity. In the modern world, we are not permitted a sense of ownership without identity. To be able to make a trade in many cases, God, if you live in some place like Sweden where they're trying to get rid of cash, right, you've got to use a card. The card is connected to your bank account. That goes on. If you're trying to buy something like property, right, how are they even going to register that? They need you to show your ID. They need you to get it stamped. You go to the people at the desk. The people at the desk then bless you to be able to participate in this transaction. If you want to be able to buy a bottle of water at the gas station, this has been and should be a cash transaction. It should be traceless. But now, increasingly, there's cards involved. Now, increasingly, there's cameras involved. Now, increasingly, there's Bluetooth beacons in the store that look at your phone and they see, oh, it's got its Bluetooth active because it was just connected to its car, so we know it's this device. We've seen this device at this mall. They've got license plate readers. All of these things form a big constellation of richness, especially when compounded with the fact that your cell phone is constantly, 100% of the time that it's turned on, screaming out into the sky, here I am, register me to the nearest tower. And then they're tracking where this goes. And all of these things mean we're never anonymous. We're never just a person. We're always this specific entity. And if we are this specific entity, we can be nudged, we can be shifted, we can be shaped by all of these people because we have universally unique identifiers. Now, programmers, developers, they love universally or globally unique identifiers, right? They want their metrics, they want their analytics, they want to see what's happening on, this app push, they want to see what's happening on this kind of device. And so they collect everyone from everything, for everything from everyone, everywhere, right? That's no different than what the NSA does. That's no different than what Facebook does. That's no different than what Google does. And they do it because it grants them increased power, right? They can be better developers. And I understand that. I'm sympathetic to that. But I think we need to sit back and really take a look at the fact that when we are gating access to the infrastructure that's necessary for life through this process of proving who you are, rather than proving a right to use, right? That you paid for this, that you should be able to access to this, that you have a blinded token of some type that could belong to anyone, but it's the digital equivalent of cash that's going, look, it doesn't matter who I am, I'm allowed to be here, right? I'm basically supporting the infrastructure, I've done my part. That's all it should be. Because we're being forced to give up ownership of our identities. We're giving up ownership of our histories, right? We're allowing others to control the story of our private lives. They get to shape it, they get to tell it, they get to say, this is the narrative of this person, this phone, this car, this whatever, this browser, right? And when we have this pervasive collection of, not pervasive collection, but this pervasive creation of records, what we fundamentally have is the disempowerment of the individual. And we have the empowerment of the institution. And a lot of people are fans of institutions, and institutions have done a lot of good throughout history. But they've also done a lot of bad. And the question is, what happens when you have institutions that are so strong that there is no alternative? What happens when you have institutions around the world in every country and don't even answer to your country, right? It's like a Mark Zuckerberg who won't go and talk to UK Parliament because he doesn't care about UK Parliament. He'll just send some lackey, right? And the people of these countries, they ask why? Why do you do this? How do we change this? We don't like this. And he can simply respond, well, that's the way it is because I said so. I'm the one in charge.